Hi, everyone. My name is Kristie Arlotta, and I work for the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. So this is our residential stormwater workshop. I'm going to turn it over to Alison Quimby to kind of do a little bit of an introduction.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alison Quimby. I work for the city of Wilmington. I've been there about 15 years, and I oversee all of the environmental programs in addition to a new program called Resilient Wilmington. The city is a very impervious area, like most cities. We are very lucky. We have source water that we drink, that's surface water. We are a combined sewer system, so we have very limited capacity in our sewers. So we always want to make sure that we are trying to maintain and manage our stormwater. And so this webinar is all about how our residents can, with native plants, help reduce stormwater getting into our sewers and to also beautify their own properties. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat. If you don't, you can just wait until the end if you don't want to forget. And hopefully this presentation will help you in the future when you're thinking about planning. It's starting to get cold now. So I am definitely going to be reviewing this in the spring and seeing what I can purchase for my own yard to help reduce stormwater and also just make my yard more beautiful for me and all the plants and animals that live near me. So, all right, go for it.
So we're going to jump in. This is kind of a partnership between the city of Wilmington and the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. A little bit about PDE. We are the host of the Delaware Estuary program, and this leads collaborative science-based efforts basically to improve the Delaware River and Bay. And the Delaware River Basin covers portions of Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So as you can see in this map, it covers a pretty large portion. So the Delaware Estuary is very large. And then we have the upper basin, which also includes parts of New York. So really everything is connected. So here at PD, we're dedicated to science and nature and working towards a healthy Delaware River and Bay. And we're happy to work with the city of Wilmington to make sure that we get there. So the health and vitality of our streams is very important. And we know that, and we see the impacts of flooding and what happens when we have lots of runoff and stormwater pollution. We see it all the time, especially during big floods like I think it was last year, yes, during Hurricane Ida, that's pictured here along the Brandywine. So it can cause a lot of damage and cause a lot of issues. And the Brandywine Creek is the source of water supply for Wilmington. So it is quite important for our livelihood. Okay, so why is it important to manage stormwater runoff? So basically we have our natural environment versus our urban environment. Rain comes from nature, but stormwater runoff is man-made. So when we have lots of impervious surfaces, meaning that it doesn't allow water to filter through it, like concrete and asphalt, we are getting a lot of what we call runoff. And that runoff carries and picks up everything along the way that is on the ground. So that could be either pesticides or fertilizers from your yard. It could also be litter, plastic, all kinds of different, like salt used, especially during snow. That's a very big one. Gasoline, anything really on your sidewalk that might be there or on the streets. So that all is running off into our water supply. And then really why is important is we want to ensure that our drinking water is clean, that is beneficial to all of us. We also want to reduce flooding, increase safety, increase wildlife habitat. In an urban setting, there's a lack of wildlife habitat and is often very fragmented, and just ensure a healthy estuary overall. And that's good for us, good for the economy, good for the animals, good for everything. So this is another kind of graphic showing stormwater. So the city of Wilmington is unique because approximately 90% of the sewers are combined. And what that means is that our sewers and our stormwater are simply combined. So basically, normally if you see in the left graphic, when sewage is exiting a building, it will go to the wastewater treatment plant. But when you have lots and lots of stormwater and nowhere for it to go through the ground, it'll all run off into our sewer storm drains and from downspouts from different buildings. So all of that gets combined, and then sometimes it overflows, and really you're just getting some nasty stuff in the water that we don't want. Sometimes it even comes back up through the streets, and then that's all like outside your property. Not very pleasant. So why does your property matter? So you might think, well, why does my residential home, apartment, really this applies to any kind of residential living situation. Why does that matter in the grand scheme? Well, household lawns actually cover 40 million acres, which is more than any commercial crop, and account for more herbicide per acre than agriculture. So your household lawn actually creates a very big impact overall in your city. In addition, as it travels, as stormwater comes, when we have those comes to your house, comes to your lawn, it will pick up everything that we leave on the land. Like we talked before, like bacteria, pesticides, all of those things. And that can actually contribute up to 30% of all water quality impairments. So after here we see in this graphic, which is interesting, after 1 inch of rain, 748 gallons of stormwater run off a typical normal house roof, which is crazy to think that so much water is just running off and not really getting absorbed by the ground. There's a lot of very useful ways to use that water that might be good for something else, like saving it later to water plants, things like that. So there's so many options that we can look at to address this. So these are some of our solutions. We talk about a lot here at PD, green infrastructure. Green infrastructure basically just filters and absorbs stormwater when it falls. We can see that in the graphic here. There's a lot of really good examples of this, and even like small changes can make a big difference. So they can include plant or soil systems, permeable pavement, like a lot of times like bricks and other types of pavements are specially made so that water can travel through it. We have stormwater harvest and reuse. That's like when you capture it, maybe either in a bucket or rain barrel, and you can use it at a later time, or landscaping. So really what we wanted to focus on was a very simple technique that you could use in your personal home that is not overwhelming and is very easy and very fun, adds a lot to your life. So we're going to talk about native plants. If you haven't heard of what a native plant is, basically a plant is considered native if it has occurred naturally in a particular region, ecosystem, or habitat without human introduction. So it was here before us, it's been here for a long time, and it knows how to grow in the environment. Specifically, native plants are very adapted to local conditions. So they don't really need a lot of work. They are very much for the low maintenance people. I love that about them. You don't require a lot of fertilizers or pesticides. They use a lot less water, and they have deeper root systems. So that helps with more filtration. So it filters the water and then helps it get to the water table, which is under the ground. They help retain water. They soak a lot of it up just for their own use. They can filter out pollution. And then their roots actually also help aerate the soil. So makes it a lot easier for water to get through. And it also holds on to that soil. So the water, you get a lot less erosion and a lot less of your soil and your lawn just heading out into the street, especially a lot of times in Wilmington, some people have sloped lawns and things like that. So it really is super helpful. So some great outcomes of adding native plants. You will have a beautiful lawn. As Alison said before, you're making your neighborhood beautiful. You're more likely to protect our drinking water, and we're also adding wildlife habitat. So overall, it is good for our health and the health of the environment, as well as maybe adding to your property, making it look nicer, making your neighborhood more enjoyable. So this is an optional opportunity. So I don't know if anyone has seen this around yards in their neighborhood, but if you actually are very interested in not just creating planting native plants, but creating an actual like habitat and making sure that wildlife is able to enjoy it and be safe, and kind of adding to that to your neighborhood and making it not just a yard, but a home for many creatures. So there's some ways to do that. And the link is in the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint will be shared at the end of this. But the Delaware Nature Society basically will certify your yard if you do a bunch of these steps, and then you can have a certified wildlife habitat. You get a cute little sign for your lawn. And it really actually is not much more complicated than having just native plants. You just have to supply some water, create rock cover, and then just like don't use lawn chemicals and things like that. Finally, here are some other ways to reduce stormwater pollution, but these are all optional of what really fits best with your life and what you want to change. One of the big ones is picking up after your animal. We don't realize how much bacteria ends up in our storm drains from our furry little friends. So just picking up after them makes a big difference, keeping litter off the sidewalk, using organic products, things like that. So there's a lot of little things we can do to make a big difference. And if we all did them, then it'd be a lot less likely that we'd have large sewer overflows and things like that, and just make everything a little bit more safer and cleaner. And long-term, we love clean water. It is good for us, good for our health and for future generations. So we talked about native plants as an option as green infrastructure. Basically, this is going to go through some of the plant options that are good, that are native, that are good, that can be planted pretty much everywhere. And they basically spells out like where you can plant certain plants. If you have a very shady yard, maybe what do you put there? This is all going to be shared afterwards, so do not worry about there being a lot of words on the screen. You do not need to write them down. Yeah, please just, it'll be shared, so no worries, no need to worry about writing excessive notes. It is all on here. Some words to know, just commonly with a lot of plant options, it can get confusing. I sometimes myself get confused. So if it says deciduous, it means it sheds its leaf annually. One that's confusing is annuals versus perennials. You would think annual comes back every year, but that actually means that a plant completes a life cycle in a year. A perennial is when it comes back every year. An herbaceous plant is any plant with flexible green stems and no woody parts. So like not a tree, not a shrub. Just think a lot of flowers and ferns and things like that. So we're going to go through our options. I broke them up into herbaceous perennials, shrubs, grasses, and trees. So we will go through that, and all of this will be shared later. One of our first options, this is good if you have a shady yard, especially if you live by a tall building. It's a very good option. The lady fern prefers moist shade, but is also sun and drought resistant. So this is a good option. It will still do the same thing that a rain plant, native plant will do. It'll absorb a bunch of the water. But if for some reason you have a shadier yard, that is also helpful. You might want to monitor it a little bit more if you're worried about it becoming overgrown, but it is pretty easy to grow and maintain. It is not a super fast spreader, and it's very tolerant of different conditions. Yeah, and it's one of those things you could buy at a plant store, which will share a bunch of areas where you can do that, and you just plant in the ground. They'll give you some more information on how to do that. It's a good option. Another option is black-eyed Susans. These are very common. You will see these all over Delaware. So many neighborhoods have these, and they're gorgeous. They're very nice if you are thinking of one that you would like to cut and put in a vase or give to a friend. They are big pollinator plants, so you'll get lots of bees and butterflies. They are deer resistant, which is helpful. And they love the sun and forgive a lot of neglect. So if you forget about them for 3 weeks, they will survive. And they're relatively short and won't be like a super tall plant. And the only really planting advice is to avoid overcrowding them. And you do want to plant them in the spring or after it has had any danger of being too hot in the fall. Another option is Joe Pyeweed. For this one, it is a pretty tall plant, but if you want a shorter cultivar, you can get Little Joe. And that is a good option if you want something a little bit shorter. But these are beautiful plants with very purple flowers, and they prefer full to partial sun exposure, meaning they like 4 to 6 hours of sun a day. It does need plenty of space. It can become quite tall. So if you want a shorter plant, you can look into shorter options. And yeah, you can grow this from a seed or a purchased plant, but it does need to have if you're growing it from a seed, you need to have it to be cold for a little bit. So you could plant it over the winter or keep it in your fridge, things like that. So there's a lot of information about this on the internet. And if you go and buy these plants, the people will help you also as well at the store. Next is New York ironweed. New York ironweed is a very tough stemmed plant. It's very straight up. It gets relatively tall, about 5 to 8 feet. So this is a very nice one that if you want to put on the borders of your property. And then it does tolerate a lot of flooding. So if you're looking for basically like a rain garden plant, it will tolerate a lot of stormwater runoff. So great to put near downspouts. Most of these plants are. And that's pretty much it for that one. And then another very common plant in Delaware that you see a lot is the purple coneflower. It is common because it is beautiful and it's really hardy, drought tolerant. It blooms for a long time. They sometimes bloom like all summer long. They're very popular with pollinators, so you'll see a lot of those there. It does like full sun and well-drained soil, but it's pretty tolerant and will survive a lot of things. And they will forgive the neglect as well. And these probably are easiest to do from seeds, but you could also get flowers from the store as well. So we also have options for shrubs if you're looking for a different kind of look for your lawn, whatever works best for the amount of space you have. One very common one is spice bush. Spice bush is a plant that is grown in moist, well-drained soil. In history, it has been used for tea, so that's an interesting historical fact. It thrives in full sunlight and partial shade. So again, like 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. And you also get the swallowtail butterflies that also frequently come to this plant. So it is very, very beautiful. And you're going to want to sow seeds in late summer or fall, and they germinate in the spring. We also have arrowwood viburnum. As you can see from the picture, you get blueberries, and then you also have white flowers, very beautiful, get a lot of variety there. You also get fall colors from yellow to orange to red. It is good for border plantings as well as hedges and screens. So that if that's something you're looking for your yard, this is a very good option. And they're not fragrant flowers. And the berries attract a lot of birds and wildlife, so that is nice. We also have a grass option. So if you're looking for grass, most grasses on lawns are actually not native. They tend to be actually either non-native or invasive species. And it's like a carpet, like it doesn't hold a lot of water. Like normal grass does not have thick roots or deep roots. So it's really not helping your lawn against any erosion or stormwater runoff. So a tall native option is the switchgrass. It's often a prairie grass, but it has deep roots and is very good for a sloped area. So if you have a sloped lawn and want to keep it from eroding, this is a very good plant for you. They also have pretty variable colors. So they like turn yellow in the fall. And they have small flowers in the summer that have a pink purple tinge. So there's some variety. It is very pretty. And this, you're probably going to start from seeds. You might want to start it in a pot first and make sure it's warm enough when you put it in the ground, because it does need the warm weather, but it will persist year round. And once it's planted, you'll have cover land, like ground cover all year. Finally, we have some tree options. This might not be for everyone, depending on their yard. Trees can often be very tall, and there's a little bit more regulation around that, especially if you were planting a tree in the city. So there's some things to keep in mind, especially height. So if you want to plant a tree under a power line, I believe it has to be no taller than 12 to 15 feet. So if you are thinking about putting it anywhere near a power line, I would contact the city. You could contact Alison if you have any questions about that. But if it is away from that and it's just on your yard, there is a couple options. The green hawthorn has one short variety, which is pretty helpful. This is actually recommended as a city tree by DNREC and the city of Wilmington. It is deciduous, meaning it sheds its leaves every year. It likes filtered shade to full sun. Most of these plants anywhere between full sun and filtered shade. They tolerate a large amount of soil types, and they do pretty good with some flooding. So this is a good option if you want to use it for some sort of stormwater protection, absorption and stuff. So this is a good one. You can see here that it has beautiful red berries and white flowers. So you get a lot of different coloring throughout the year, and the fruit actually lasts throughout winter. So it'll be red all year or all throughout the winter. And is very good for urban areas. And you do want to plant them during milder months of spring or fall because they don't like heat or cold stress. So that's something to think about. You might want to plant them in the spring. A lot of the plant sales happen in the spring anyways, so that's a good time to get them. And the next one is the American Redbud. This one is a little bit taller typically, but there are some smaller varieties linked below. Like one of them is Ace of Hearts. So if you're looking for that, it's got very nice heart-shaped leaves, beautiful purple flowers, and they begin flowering at a pretty young age. So if you get them younger, you will get the rewards of the flowers pretty soon. Another one, it's called common juniper, but it kind of reminds you of, it's like Christmas tree, evergreen looking, but it could grow either up straight or it can grow more as a shrub. It does like full sun exposure, but it's very tolerant to urban pollution and urban conditions. They will deal with a lot of flooding, and they don't require like any attention. You might have to prune it a little bit in winter if you want, but very low maintenance. And you have that with those needle-like leaves, and then you get berry-like green cones that end up turning a deep purple and blue, and it's very low spreading, so you're not going to worry about it spreading all over your lawn. It's about 5 feet tall to up to 13 feet across. You can get cultivars that are tall like a tree, or more that is just ground cover. So when you're shopping for a plant, that's something to ask. Some taller trees, if you're looking for like a very long-term tall tree, you have the space in your backyard, something like that. The common hackberry, river birch, and red maple are all really good for water absorption, and adding those big roots to your soil and helping aerate the soil and all the great things we talked about with native plants. This is some information on how to sow seeds. I know sometimes in the slides it's mentioned, and if you have no idea what that is, this is a good link on how to do it. Basically, you're making sure that your seeds have water, oxygen, and heat, and a lot of times you start them indoors and make sure that they are growing, and then you can move them to bigger pots to outside as you do it. So we have some additional resources. So if you're going shopping for a native plant, we have a guide you could bring with you that basically just has some pictures and names of all of the things that were on the slide. So you could take it with you. If you're going to a store and you have no idea what to get, at least you have maybe a couple of suggestions that they might have. I would also recommend always asking the staff. We do have a list of nurseries to buy native plants, and many of them are very helpful if you need help finding something. In addition, you're not allowed to plant a tree on public sidewalk.
Yeah, it's called the right of way.
Yes.
In between the sidewalk and where the road is.
Yes.
That's considered city property. So if you're interested in getting a tree, The city is very interested in putting trees in tree pits that are empty, or if your tree is not in good health, we are interested in always maintaining and making sure that our street trees are in good condition. Or if you see trees in your neighborhood where you would like to have more, the city is very interested in being part of that and connecting with constituents and urbanizing or adding more trees to our urban area. So
Yes, definitely. Reach out to the city of Wilmington if you need anything. The
mhm.
link is there if you need more information.
You can always
And
call the call center as well, which is
yes, it's
311.
311, right?
Mhm.
Yes, you can just call 311. Well, thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We have Allison's email and my email. We can get you where you need to go, the information that you need. So please utilize the native plant nursery list, especially with spring coming up. We will probably having an in-person meeting in the spring of 2023. So we would love it if you attend, and we can have hopefully some demonstrations on, exactly installing some stormwater infrastructure in your yard, whether that be how to plant certain plants, and so on. So we hope to see you all in the spring. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, let us know if you need anything at all.